Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Paul Macedo, Communications Officer with Can-Do. And this is part of our weekly Wednesday webinar series where we introduce EDOs and individuals working in economic development and owners of businesses and so on, or future entrepreneurs. And we introduce them to subject matter experts in the field to help them either diversify their businesses or expand their businesses or start their businesses. I've got a few more people to admit into the room. Okay. So today with us is Todd Evans, who's the national lead for Indigenous exporters with Export Development Canada. Today's presentation is an introduction to Export Development Canada, EDC, and how exporting can be an option to diversify your market or grow your market. For a number of EDOs who may not be export ready, this is information that could position you to take advantage of some opportunities to fast track your export readiness, or maybe you just hadn't considered it in the past. And once you get to know Todd and his group, it might be something you'll look forward to doing and can, I guess, take a fast track to developing that. So Todd is going to take over the presentation. I'll bow out until the end. If you have questions, please use the chat function. Type those questions in and we'll make sure that Todd gets them and addresses them towards the end. Please know that this session is being recorded. And in addition to that, the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation will be made available on edo.ca, links to learning, Wednesday webinar. Just go to that page and Todd's session will be there with recording and with the presentation for download. Okay, so Todd, take it away, please.
Well, thanks very much, Paul. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm honored for the opportunity to work and live on the unceded territory and homeland of the Algonquian and Anishinaabe Nation. So hello, everyone. Bonjour, Gwe, Deloise, Todd Evans. My name is Todd Evans, as Paul mentioned, National Lead for Indigenous Exporters at EDC. And my responsibility is really building out our Indigenous business strategy, raising awareness, sort of engaging with the Indigenous business community and really making sure that our products are accessible and relevant for Indigenous companies. I'd also like to mention that I have Randy Lott, my colleague based in Regina, on the call with us today. Randy is one of our account managers, senior account managers. Has worked with quite a few Indigenous companies, and Randy will be talking a little bit later about his role and how the account manager can support our companies. I also have Alison McEwen on the line with us today. Alison is with our stakeholder relations team, and she works a lot with a lot of our Indigenous business partners as well. So it's great to have my colleagues here today. So just to give a sort of lay out the roadmap for today's session, I'll do a quick introduction to EDC, and then I'll talk a little bit about sort of the role of exporting and how that can fit in with sort of support your economic development strategies, your business development strategies. Talk a little bit about kind of some of the sort of planning and sort of keys to success around exporting, and then I guess probably more relevant or kind of the meat is sort of what solutions does EDC have in place to support Canadian exporters. And then at the back, you'll see, I won't go into a lot of detail, but I have provided a lot of our sort of links and information around our knowledge solutions. And again, as Paul mentioned, the presentation is available for download, and you'll see within the presentation as well all the hyperlinks have been copied into most of the resources. So really, EDC, we're a financial crown corporation owned by the federal government, so owned by the taxpayer. So we're one of the financial crowns along with BDC and FCC and CCC. And really sort of EDC, sort of our primary kind of mandate is to really sort of increase access to capital and reduce risk for Canadian companies, and sort of reducing that risk and providing access to capital. We do that through four basic areas. First is through financing. So that's things like loan guarantees, access to working capital, support for your lines of credit, operating lines, and in some cases we can also do direct lending as well. We offer a number of insurance products. Again, it's all about kind of protecting your business, and sort of ensuring your sales against loss. And again, this is kind of managing and reducing risk. And I'm going to go into more detail of some specific products later, some of our more popular products that companies use. And of course, for exporting, knowledge about exporting is just as important as as having access to the financial products as well. So we have a whole suite of knowledge products, and again, we'll get into that a little bit later. But understanding about market opportunities, excuse me, sort of export knowledge, risk reduction strategies, sort of understanding the logistics of customs regulations. So that whole suite of products, and then finally is connections. So we do have programs where we can introduce Canadian companies into EDC's trade ecosystem. We have specific programs where we can introduce companies to foreign buyers. So that's again kind of introductions to our ecosystem, and not just companies as well, but also financial institutions are part of that. So again, it's kind of bringing EDC's network to our customers. And really, one thing I should mention too is that EDC operates in a complementary way. So we typically will not go in and do a complete financing, a complete kind of transaction on our own. I mean, there are cases where we might do that, but typically we're complementary to the private market, and we will often work through your bank or through financial institution partners, our knowledge partners, and other business partners to add capacity. Sort of add capacity on the financing side and add capacity on the knowledge side. And we do support Canadian companies of all sizes, industries, and sectors. So there's often a perception that EDC kind of just for big companies only, but in fact, most of our clients are smaller companies, mid-sized companies. And again, that's just a reflection of the Canadian Canadian economy. So again, it's keep that in mind that we we do work with many different companies. And so we just got our numbers for 2020, and I think our client count for 2020, including financial and knowledge customers, were 23,000, something like that. Might even be a little bit higher. So gives you a sense of the number of companies that we work with within Canada. So when it comes to our Indigenous business strategy, really it's all about sort of building that trade ecosystem that brings Indigenous companies into the export and international trade market. So everything I just explained about EDC, it's about making sure that our Indigenous companies, our Indigenous businesses have equal access to all of those programs. It's relevant for their business. And we've done that, or we're in the process of doing that. I mean, we still, it's a process, it's a work in progress, but we've engaged with a number of different industry associations. We have partners, pretty good partnership relationships now with CCAB, and of course with CANDO, working with NACA, and in particular we'll be working with NACA on the upcoming Indigenous Growth Fund. We've done a little bit of work with ITAC, the Indigenous Tourism Association, but also working with Indigenous financial institutions as well, be it the major banks and some of the other banks like a First Nations Bank or Peace Hills Trust dedicated to the Indigenous space. So again, it's really working with our partners, learning about the Indigenous business community, the needs, the challenges, and bringing that back and making sure that our products at EDC meet those needs. And I'll say that it does require EDC to, in many cases, to start thinking outside the box, because the indigenous businesses, and particularly economic development corporations, it's not. I mean, we've done work within some of our clients are actually economic development corporations, but again, it's not historically what EDC has typically done. So we're still learning, and we are adjusting our programs and tweaking it here and there to make those programs relevant. And just very quickly, I'll make the point that it's not about special treatment. It's really about creating that level playing field and making sure there's equal access across Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups. One thing I like to sort of remind people is, and I'm sure people on this call don't have to be reminded of this, that, but Indigenous nations, and we've always been traders. So I found this map, sort of pre-Columbian continental trade routes, and it really shows a very, very diverse network of sort of trade across the whole continent. And again, it's a reminder that, that kind of trading spirit is always been there, and I think it's still there, and it's something we can build on going forward. So I'll spend a little bit of time here just talking about kind of role of exports and how it can fit in with in sort of broader economic development strategies. First, talk a little bit about some of the key differences when it comes to exporters and sort of the non-exporters. I think one of the key things to remember, one of the things we certainly look at EDC is, looking at the size of the Canadian market and Canadian opportunities relative to the global market. So Canada is less than 2% of the global market. So again, there's a lot of opportunities outside of Canada and just south of us in the United States as well. We see that exporters have increased diversification in their sales and their customer base in the markets, and that kind of diversification generally leads to more revenue. Typically, exporters have a more resilient and sustainable business model. Again, more customers. It's diversification, and we do see that when you have that kind of diversification, there is more resilience, more sustainability in your business, and it does reduce risk and the impact of economic downturns. So there's definitely some good evidence of that. We know exporters would typically also pay higher wages. They employ more skilled workers. They're typically, you take the average exporter versus the average non-exporter. They typically have faster, sort of more higher growth rates as well. And just very quickly, kind of the economic impact, right? So if you take a sort of on average $1 million of exports out of Canada, it supports 5.5 jobs, on average. I'm not sure if you'd want to be that half a job, but and about $715,000 in GDP will come out of every $1 million of exports. So again, the economic impact that can come from exporting is quite significant. Also, you get access to more global technologies. You're more in tune with consumer tastes, what are the best practices, and again, so it's a two-way flow of information that can make your business more innovative and more nimble in that sense. I want to throw a couple numbers out there, just to give you a sense of the scale of Canada's export industry. So in 2020, even with the pandemic, where exports were down anywhere, depending on the sector, anywhere from 12% to 20%. So exports of merchandise goods, all the physical stuff we make, was about $520 billion last year. Services were about another $112 billion. So we had like north of $630 billion of exports in 2020, and that's in a recession, in lockdowns, and in the pandemic. So going forward, there's going to be some significant opportunities when it comes to sort of growth opportunities to grow your business. And again, it's we're looking through the next couple of years as the recovery sets in. There is a lot of pent-up demand, and we think that the export markets are going to pick up again as we move forward, and that's where EDC can come in and help and work with companies to take advantage of those opportunities. So I was looking at some of the last couple of days and preparing this presentation. I wanted to kind of bring in sort of the economic development aspect and exports. And I found this cool chart in the Economic Development Toolkit for Indigenous Communities, which was prepared by the BC AFN. So I won't go through this in detail, but again, you can see here where sort of some of the sort of core underlying support that you need to support sort of the mandate of economic development, which is ultimately that improvement in socioeconomic conditions and outcomes for your communities, Indigenous communities. So exports can be part of that, can support that. So when you look at business opportunities, again, looking beyond the Canadian border, access to capital, that's where EDC can play a role, and that's we have partnerships with financial institutions. We also have partnerships with other crowns to improve access to capital, be that a BDC or an FCC. So that's one of the areas that for 2021 we'll certainly be placing more emphasis on that. And again, the sort of access to those exports and getting into those export markets, it's creating and expanding those sustainable and viable businesses that lead to the employment and income opportunities as well. So we often get the question or issue comes up, who isn't exporting? And as I noted, exporting is not only for large companies. We see companies that have, multi-billion-dollar sales, but we also see companies that are 2 or 3 employees, and they, sell their products in many different markets as well. So basically, any company that sells a product or service outside of Canada is an exporter. And I put the emphasis here on services as well, because when I started at EDC many years ago, an export was kind of defined as something that if you could drop it on your foot, well, you can export it. But that's not the case anymore, because with technology and more tradable services, we're seeing pretty much anything can be traded these days, and we're seeing that. And also, a lot of companies are, typically historically a company when they went sort of on the start of their exporter journey, they'd have a local market in Canada, expand across Canada, go to the United States, kind of get their experience and confidence, build up some scale in the United States. And that's still very important sort of growth path for a lot of companies. But a lot of companies now are also just out of the gate, they're exporting everywhere. Again, the technology is there, and some of the support programs to do that, right? So we also kind of over the past year and a half, we're talking to a lot more Indigenous companies, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and we're also seeing that some of them are exporters and maybe don't even realize it. And in particular, what I'm talking about here as well is also the services, but also the indirect exporter. So we have sort of most of our industries will have a supply chain within Canada. So if you're if there's a large resource company, mining, energy, forestry, or a large manufacturing automotive company, or even some of the large technology companies, right? So if you're most of these are big exporters with big supply chains inside of Canada. So really, it's so if you're a smaller company, you're providing goods and services to some of these larger exporters, then you're classified as an exporter as well. Maybe not a direct exporter, but you're still part of that export supply chain, and all the services and that I'm going to talk about later that EDC has on offer is also available to companies working in those export supply chains. And in fact, we do have a number of companies. I know of a couple offhand that are subsidiaries of economic development corporations that actually are EDC clients, and they're part of that indirect export supply chain. So maybe if time permits, we can talk a little bit about more of that later. And again, tourism as well. If you're a tourism operation with international visitors, again, that has that export element to it. I know tourism has just been completely hammered by the pandemic, and but again, it's at some point we do see a recovery coming, but it may take time. So some of the things, a successful exporter, it's really just, a lot of knowledge, a lot of preparation, knowing your product, and having a good export strategy. Like any business initiative, any business undertaking, you need a good strategy to move forward. Market research is very important. Know the industry, know your competitors, know who your customers are, and also when you go to market, you need to understand what kind of value you're bringing to your customers, and also to stand out from your competitors as well. So you're just not another widget or some product amongst dozens and dozens of others. So how to add value to that product, to differentiate your product. Free trade agreements, we include that. There is some relevance here, and some of the newer agreements now have provisions for indigenous trade. So again, it's something to understand, and there's resources for that. Also, take time to understand the culture that you're selling to, whether it's across Canada or anywhere in the world. If you have a better sense of who you're selling to, and again, getting back to that kind of export strategy and having that market entry plan in place. And we do have some resources we can share on that. Also, too, it's also making sure that you have the capacity to do that, having the human capital and the working capital. And this is where hopefully EDC can help you with that as well. So very quickly, building an export plan, some of your key considerations, know your product, know your potential, and know your service, not about overextending yourself. Have good focus objectives to keep you sort of on track, knowing the market, knowing the customer, the cultural and languages differences, having a good financial plan in place to manage your cash flow and risk. Intellectual property is certainly a key issue, particularly when it comes to indigenous branding. We know that Canada has a pretty good brand globally. We also know that when you layer on indigenous branding onto that, it just elevates that branding sort of relevance and attractiveness even more, particularly when you get into markets in Asia and through Eastern or through Europe as well. Also, indigenous supplier certification is definitely something to think about, and know your partners as well, and have good relations with your partners, whether it's through financing, the shipping companies you're using, your customs brokers, and all any legal or other advisors, and also having your documentation in order. I know this seems like a lot, but the benefits that can come from this can be significant. And again, not just for you and your company, but also for your community and your employees as well. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the financial and risk mitigation solutions we have. So we do have a whole range of products, but I guess there's two things with the sort of developing a strategy is kind of access to capital and kind of managing your cash flow and reducing risk. And we know that managing sort of that risk of selling international is an important part of exporting. Some of the risks that keep to take into account. I mean, there's commercial risk, non-payment. Your customers go bankrupt. There's contract disputes. Payment schedules, overdue payments, sort of range of issues, and there could also be political risks as well, and certainly some issues around exchange rate fluctuation as well. And again, this is where EDC can come in and work with a company and work with an exporter to really share that risk, and I would say even more than share that risk, take that risk off of your books and put most of it onto our books. So some things to consider when you do export is just go in with eyes wide open, right? It may be longer payment periods. The contract structures could be different from what you're normally used to working domestically in Canada. There's foreign exchange risks, though our economics team has a pretty stable outlook for the Canadian dollar over the next year or two. But again, in this global environment, and any kind of thing can happen. And of course, having access to working capital is quite is quite, is core, right, to that. So I mean, do you have enough cash on hand to meet those contract obligations? And again, I'll talk a little bit about that later. When it comes to payment terms, are you getting the same payment terms that you're normally used to? So you have taken into consideration shipping times and payment schedules. Contract structures may be different. Maybe you don't get paid upon shipping, but maybe it's a payment arrangement where the goods, you get paid when the goods arrive to the foreign buyer. And sometimes exporters may need to post bonds. These could be advance or performance or bid bonds to have kind of more access to those contracts. And I'll give you an example of that later as well. Sometimes the contracts can be a little more structured, with kind of clear delivery milestones along the way. So it's important to keep those in mind. So these are just some of the issues to keep in mind when you are doing business internationally, and quite often it can be different than what you see within Canada domestically. But one thing that's I would say is certainly common to both is having that good strong relationship and building that trust. It's always I mean, that'll always that's one thing that I don't think will ever change. So EDC does have a number of financing solutions that can support financing needs, like anything from to support pre-shipment needs or work in progress financing, sort of an operating line or an increase to a current operating line. You have a new contract, or you're bidding on a contract. You need to kind of get your financing in place for that. So this is where EDC can come in and work with that. So EDC will typically work with your financial institution. In some cases, we can also introduce you to one of our financial institution partners. When I say financial institution partners, I mean the banks, trust companies, credit unions. So we have sort of partnerships now with I would hazard 75, 80 financial institutions, perhaps even more than that. A couple of sort of our more popular programs when it comes to financing is our BCAP and Export Guarantee Program. So these are financing guarantees that we provide to your financial institution. And again, it's we're EDC AAA rated entity, Government of Canada entity. So we'll provide a backstop to your bank when they're extending you credit. It's really about sharing risk. The structures can be quite flexible. And there is appetite there. Again, EDC's risk appetite for business conducted outside of Canada. It's what we do, and we have a lot of appetite to do that. The benefits are increased access to capital. Again, it can facilitate your international expansion, and also keep in mind it can also facilitate if you're working in those indirect export supply chains, and a lot of your clients are resource companies, energy, mining, within Canada, or as well. Sort of when we look at those indirect exports, you could also be part of an export platform. So I'll give you couple of specific examples. So the oil sands in northern Alberta are classified as an export platform, like the offshore oil off the east coast. Some other larger infrastructure projects, like the port expansions in Prince Rupert and the Delta Port expansion in Vancouver. The new bridge that's being built between near Detroit and Windsor. Those are considered trade facilitation projects. Excuse me. So again, if you're kind of feeding into those projects, these programs can come into play here as well. So quickly, so traditionally we had our traditional export loan guarantee program, and that's really, I won't get into all the details here. I just want to make you aware of it. But really, how that works, it's typically through a bank, your financial institution, and you go to your bank. You're looking for credit to bid on a new contract, to expand your business, to meet an export contract, or to really just to get access to the credit and operating lines to grow your business. And so so the banks sometimes might say, well, we're maybe they're a little bit hesitant, a little bit iffy, and so the EDC's guarantee gives them the comfort in extending that credit, and you get access to credit through that export guarantee program. Now for COVID, we brought in a streamlined version of the export guarantee program. So it's BCAP, Business Credit Availability Program. It's again it's a guarantee program, but it's a more streamlined version. We let the banks do all the credit review, credit analysis. EDC will not do any due diligence on the BCAP loan guarantees. It's a 5-year term instead of a 1-year term on a traditional loan guarantee, and it's another useful thing here too is that we will not look for any underlying collateral or capital to support or security to support that guarantee. The banks might, but EDC is kind of stepping back and letting the sort of adding our capacity and letting the banks do a lot of the due diligence around that. And to date, I would say there's been a pretty good pickup on that program. Another one we talk about a lot is credit insurance. So this is accounts receivable insurance. It's really about insuring your sales to foreign buyers, and it's what we call kind of the sleep at night insurance, right? So we'll provide 90% coverage against a non-payment, and so that's also gives you that confidence knowing that you'll be paid for all your international and domestic orders with that insurance being covered. It's one thing with the credit insurance. Even though it's an insurance product, it does improve your access to capital. So most banks will actually lend against those insured receivables, and in fact, some banks will actually ask that their clients will insure their sales. Again, just having that comfort in place. And again, it could cover sales ranging from a few thousand to multi-million-dollar contracts. And also, when you know that you've got that insurance in place, it gives you more comfort. You can extend better payment terms or meet some of those different payment terms that are required in international trade I was talking about earlier. And knowing that your sales are insured, you can also then to your foreign buyers, when you're bidding on those contracts, you can actually offer better payment terms to them, maybe that your competitor is not able to as well, right? And also, just looking at the timer, we do have, as noted here, I won't go into the details, some extra considerations to in response to the COVID-19. Very quickly, the credit insurance options. There's 2 options here. You can kind of do it from insure your all of your business, or you can just do it on select buyers or select markets kind of thing. And we outlined the 2 different options here, right? So select credit insurance, I mean, you're looking at new markets and relationships with a few customers. You need something fast, simple, and it's typically done a lot of it's done online with no face-to-face, and usually smaller transactions will do kind of that select credit. So if you're looking at sort of the portfolio, you're consistently have export sales, you have a number of customers, so you can kind of give you a pool or sort of a blanket insurance policy against all of your business. So as new customers come in or you're finding new markets, you'll be covered under that broader policy without having to go and get a new policy every time. So again, I will give you some links to those resources. Also, where we see another popular product is our bonding solutions. So again, it's in working with your financial institution. And so it comes down to issuing performance and sort of letters of guarantee, standby letters of credit Quite often you'll see it used in foreign exchange facilities, and something new as well, relatively new, I should say, is the commodity edging that comes from that. But the benefits here, again, it frees up capital for your business. So bonding will often tie up your working capital and operating loans when you need your cash flow at the most, right? So your cash flow, you're getting those new contracts, you're expanding. That's when cash flow is paramount. And a lot of smaller and growing companies often just don't have the underlying base or security to secure these to secure those kinds of facilities. Letter of credit, letters of guarantee that often come along with international contracts. So again, that's where EDC's bonding solutions can come in and facilitate that. So I know bonding is one that there's a lot of people sometimes scratch their head. So I just put a little example in there, right? So just think you're a small company, you've just won a contract in the United States that requires a 10% performance bond. Could be in the form of a letter of guarantee or a standby letter of credit. So Jane goes to her bank and they tell her that she'll need to post cash as collateral to issue the bond. So her immediate concern is right away a 10% performance bond. She got $100,000 in cash tied up for the whole length of that contract, and that can really restrict your working capital needs at a time, as I mentioned, when you need it most. So luckily we have a solution here. We can come in with one of our bonding products, in this case, an account performance security guarantee, and so we provide the bank with a 100% guarantee, and that removes that 10% requirement, collateral requirement. And so we often see this as well in the sort of the construction side of another great example. We've seen like the construction companies using this bonding solution as well. So for example, you own a construction company and you're building a road into the new Kitimat expansion, or you're building the road into Prince Rupert, or you're working on some of the construction around Prince Rupert. You often have to put up these kinds of performance bonds. Again, this bonding solution can be ideal for those situations as well. I'm looking at the time here. I know I've covered a lot. So I'm going to turn it over to Randy at this point. Randy is our account manager, senior account manager based in Regina, and Randy will run you through kind of the role of the account manager and sort of our system and sort of how we operate across Canada. So.
Great. Thank you, Todd. And I think this was strategically placed so that you'd have a chance to kind of catch your breath. You had a lot of material that you ran through there. Thanks for the lead in. So very basically, my name is Randy Lott, and I'm based in Regina. My role is Senior Account Manager with Export Development Canada, and where I focus is really, I guess, two-pronged. Firstly, I'm there for the exporter and the client. They're one and the same, but I will deal with them, very directly. In terms of helping them talk through their plans, work through their plans, determining if there's ways that EDC might be able to work with them through a lot of the products and services that Todd's described. But that's my principal engagement, is really the client-facing role. Secondly, I also spend a lot of my time working with industry partners, be it economic development officers like yourselves, or bankers, insurance industry partners, and so on. So I will work with a lot of other partners within the industry to help deliver the services and products to the clients at the end of the day. To give you a little bit of a sense of sort of my role here in Saskatchewan in terms of coverage. So I cover the province of Saskatchewan, all clients, all sizes, and I will often act as the primary contact or the initial contact point, whether it be for a customer or for an industry partner. The way that looks quite often is I'll have a call from an economic development officer or a banker. They'll usually call me with a story, and of course, nonfiction story, but they will call me with a story. And the reason there's such big value in that is I need to understand a little bit about what the client is doing, what they want to achieve, and basically where they're hoping to go. Once I understand that, I can then sort of bring in the relevant EDC resources, and I can help to build a partnership around it so that we can work with the bank and the other partners to basically get the client's needs served. So starts with a story. Always reach out to me as your local contact here in Saskatchewan. We have a network across the country, coast to coast. In Western Canada, as an example, Vancouver, we've actually got a recently created office in Victoria, Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, and Winnipeg. So that'd be the 4 Western provinces. And similarly, there's all in all 21 offices across Canada. So always, reach out to us. We're a great initial contact point, and more often than not, we'll help you directly, or we'll make sure that you get to the right place. Outside of Canada, we've got about 21 representations in different countries, different locations, resources that we use, as well as we extensively use our government partners like Global Affairs Canada and the like. But that's a little bit of a snapshot, I guess, of the footprint in Canada and what the account manager's role is. But again, don't hesitate to call and tell us a story. Let us know the scenario you're looking at, and we can very quickly help you to determine how we can best help. Thanks, Todd.
That's great, Randy. Thanks very much. So the kind of work that our account managers like Randy do, it's invaluable. They're on the ground, they're face to face with our clients, and so at the end of the day, really, if you have any questions, you can come to me, and I can introduce you to people like Randy, and you'll have a deeper understanding that get a good understanding of your business, and also a deep understanding of EDC's products and how EDC's products can potentially help your business. So we're almost there in terms of the last couple of slides. So I just want to present a couple more to give you a sense of some of the resources we have. So this really kind of encapsulates sort of the whole kind of spectrum of the export journey, if you can call it that, or the process, and it kind of gives you some of the resources, and these are all actual links you can go into. But what I like about this is that no matter where you are along that spectrum, if you're if you're just planning this export, starting to think about exporting, you can go in there and get some ideas and sort of ways to explore the market and do the research. If you're a new exporter, maybe just got a couple sales under your belt, again, there's there's information there that could potentially help as well. But if you've already been exporting and you're looking to take that next step, again, it's it's hopefully there's some useful information here you can use. I'm going to end it on this slide. You'll notice that we've provided some more resources back here, but I won't get into that. I want to leave some for Q&A. But I would recommend that if you're interested in learning more about EDC, what products we have, and kind of just getting to understand a little bit more about the export markets, I would strongly recommend to go to the link or the My EDC account. You can go in, register, just put in some basic information. It's free, and you can pose questions to our trade advisors, get access to a whole range of different webinars, articles, links to some of our partners. So again, there's a lot of information here, and it's having that access to our exporter resource support group, our trade advisors, can be quite valuable. But at the end of the day, you'll see my contact information is here in this presentation. It's quite easy. It's tevans@edc.ca. So really, please feel free to if you have any specific questions or just want to follow up or talk about a specific issue, by all means, reach out to me, and I'll, I can put you in touch with the right people, or certainly walk you through some of the different services and what we have, and perhaps, even more importantly, introduce you to those through account managers like Randy that can really kind of get down to the sort of the nitty gritty and then really get the support that you need. So I'm going to end it there. If there's any questions, I'll stop sharing my screen. So thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Todd.
And Paul, got any questions coming through?
We had a couple of questions. So as a reminder, please use the chat for your questions. And also there will be a recording available probably in the next hour or so. The presentation PowerPoint is available for download as well. I've included the link inside the chat function, but basically you go to edo.ca and along the top menu button, you'll see links to learning. Click on that and then go to the webinar Wednesday and it'll be right at the top. And you can then download the presentation or view the recording of today's session. The question we had was from, I believe it was Margaret. Margaret was asking about construction company building a road. Would there be no international export requirements to get bonding without collateral?
So in that that's an excellent question, and in that case, there would be no direct international export requirements, but there would be a recognition that the company is working in an export supply chain. So that could be an export platform. You're building that road in the Kitimat or one of those big port expansions that have been designated as export platforms or export activity. Others could be, you're doing construction work around the oil sands or for a large miner, a forestry product, providing construction services to, to a nutrient, to a Cameco, to a Western Forest Products kind of thing. And in those cases, the bonding products would be available to your company. So there's no direct, you're not exporting directly, but you're part of that export supply chain. So I hope that answers your question.
For those EDOs and communities interested in exporting, we are going to schedule Todd to come back next week as part of the Links to Learning series. So Todd and some of his regional managers will be available on Tuesday for Alberta and BC and on Thursday for Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So it'll be a good opportunity to kind of scaffold on what Todd has presented today. And more importantly, Todd will introduce you to the regional managers of each of those regions. So you have direct contacts with EDC locally to kind of take this to the next level and pursue your interest in developing exports. So, even if you're not completely ready, or the businesses that you represent or the community businesses you represent aren't fully ready, if you have contacts like Todd or like the regional managers, if you have established those contacts and you have that relationship, then when those businesses are ready or potentially are going to be ready, you'll know exactly who to tap into and connect with to take it to the next level, rather than starting from scratch. In 3 months or 6 months or 9 months from now, you'll already have that established contact list and relationship to then take it further.
That's thanks for that, Paul, and thanks for that reminder. Yeah, so for the for those sessions next week, we'll be talking a little bit about kind of some of the key export activities, key export industries in those provinces. A couple of case studies to illustrate how companies were helped by some of those products. Also, we're going to review some of the more sort of more specifically some of the tools available for doing market research, for exploring international markets. For example, we have a database where you can go in and look at, if you got your sights on a couple of foreign buyers, you can actually do a bit of research on those companies. And one thing I could have mentioned earlier is that so when you do start looking at those foreign buyers and you actually get a contract with them, EDC will do the due diligence on that foreign buyer, so you don't have to go in and do all of that due diligence yourself. I mean, that's what EDC is here for, to bring in that capacity, right? So we'll do the due diligence on the foreign buyers as well, and so we'll talk about more in more specificity about some of those issues next week. See, there's some issues there. So the PowerPoint is going to be shared. So I see one here. We from Cindy Collins. Hi, Cindy. So we have been doing some large projects in the millions, housing subdivision, about 50 units, gas station, store, health buildings, etc. So in sort of pre-COVID normal times, it would still need that export element behind that. But with the BCAP program I mentioned earlier, we have been that BCAP is available to, and I neglected to mention that the BCAP is available for all business. There's no distinguish whether it's an export or domestic. So BCAP is available. The Business Credit Availability Program is offered for all domestic business as well, and we have actually been doing some of these similar kind of projects or supporting through our financial institution partners. I know there's a few economic development corporations have taken advantage of BCAP, again, investing in some of their businesses to offset revenues that have been lost elsewhere due to COVID. But if there's something very specific that you want to talk about there, by all means, feel free to reach out to me, and we can take that offline.
Todd, there was a question from David regarding foreign trade zones. Are you familiar with those?
Not entirely, but it's something I can look into more specifically. So we're invested in the lumber sector, and as an example, we are exploring moving wood tariff exempt. So perhaps that's where the some of our recent trade agreements can come into play. I know a lot of those tariffs, if you take like the CETA deal we have with European Union, or the recent CUSMA. We also have the one with the Asian side, the trade, I forget the actual CPTPP, comprehensive trade, free trade agreement with Canada and Asian countries. Again, a lot of those tariffs are being taken down. But if you want to, again, I'd be happy to talk to you and get a little more context, and I might be able to put you in the right direction. And sometimes when I get questions like this, I can refer you to one of my colleagues at the Trade Commissioner Service, or sometimes, if we think BDC has a better product, we don't, take it on ourselves to think that we got to do everything, but we will, introduce you to other people as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk a little more about that.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We know your time is busy. There's a lot of demands on that time. And thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you to Todd Evans and Randy Lott. Lots of information. Please be aware, you're not alone in your export journey. So there's people and organizations here to try to assist so that you can learn from the path that others have taken before you. So if you're interested in the regional sessions, the times and dates are, you just go to edo.ca and links to learning, and then you can see the different times and dates for Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And by all means, if you're not in those regions, but you want to know more, please join us for that. It's not, if you're not from BC, you can't tune into BC. You're more than welcome, but the information will be specifically developed and presented for each of those provinces. So just so you're aware. Okay, so that's it from me. Thank you so much. Weekly webinar Wednesday continues next week. So join us then at 11 o'clock Mountain Time, 1 o'clock Eastern.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks again, Todd and Randy.
Well, thanks everyone. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. Walaliak. Bye-bye.